Bailey Massey, welcome to the Star Coach Show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you.
I'm excited. We're going to be talking about how we use our voice to increase our confidence, to step into some of the things that maybe we're uncomfortable about stepping into, but that grow our business, but that our presence and how we show up is so influenced by our voice. That is what Bailey is an expert in. And that's why I was so excited to have her on the show. Bailey comes from Bailey Massey Global. She's located in Denver. What a beautiful place to be on this earth. And uses her expertise in having a master's in communication to basically help people understand the profound influence of how we communicate, the way that our voices influence that, and how science and research can really inform how we show up that way. That's her expertise. So, who wouldn't want her to come in front of a group of coaches and leaders here at the Star Coach Show to talk about how can we really tailor what it is that we are doing, and Bailey promised she's going to give us some tips and tricks and strategies, so stay tuned for that, to kind of, okay, tell me if I'm wrong here, Bailey, but to try to fake it till we make it in a way, like have our voice show up in a way that it really creates that clarity of communication. How are we projecting our voice? Using how we're using our words, which is what we do as coaches, in a way that also influences the conversation, because and yes, Bailey is an expert in what comes out of our mouth, but she also knows that we've got two of these and one of these. So how are we using our ears to influence our communication? So with that, before we dive in, I just want to welcome all of you again and let you know that if you're watching us on YouTube, hey, we're thrilled to see you. We would love for you to subscribe while you're here and leave a comment. Bailey and I both want to know, how did this impact you? What are you going to do? Maybe what's one tip that Bailey offers that you're going to actually put into practice? We're going to keep our eyes on that, and we would love to know. If you're listening to this through all the different podcast platforms, be sure to subscribe wherever you listen so you never miss a moment of the Star Coach Show, because experts like Bailey come on every single week. We talk about strategies, tools, and resources to help you be the best you are at putting your work into the world. And let's start right now with throwing the ball over to Bailey and say, where in this concept of let's grow our confidence in the way that we are showing up and using our voice, where do we even want to start with that sort of mind-blowing concept?
Yeah, great question. And it's definitely incredibly complex, but not as much as you would think. It all really starts with breathing. And it seems silly because we have to breathe every day, but we don't think about it.
I was going to say, we have to do it and we do it all the time, so we don't think about it.
Exactly. So, one of the things I talk to people about all the time is stop thinking about breathing as a survival thing. Your body's going to do it for you. That's going to happen. Instead, if you can think of it as a strategy that you are really adjusting and figuring out what works for you, that's where you can start to build and have actual control.
Oh, wow. So, for all of you who are listening, think about when you are in a situation and you're not paying attention to your breathing, but when you do, you realize that maybe you're panting, or maybe you are, maybe you're taking deep, relaxing breaths. And so, the way that you're breathing is probably influencing the way that you're feeling. Huh?
Yeah, and I think there is an internal and an external impact on how you're using your breath. Internally, it's are you nervous? Are you anxious? If you are literally depriving your body of oxygen, your body's going to say, okay, time to panic. And that just spirals in a bad direction. That then is going to make you more nervous. You're going to second guess yourself. You're not going to see what you're capable of and what has led you to whatever it is that you're doing in that moment
We
because of
really
that.
don't make good choices when we're in survival mode. So
No,
like our thinking isn't going to be as focused and clear because our brain has just been hijacked by survival.
absolutely. And then there's also that external side where kind of how you described if you're like panting, if you are presenting information, it doesn't matter if you're faking it till you make it and you're not quite sure, but you sound like you are, or if you are the expert, but you show up and you say, so we're gonna talk about communication and I really want you all, like if I showed up and that was my voice, people would be like, is she the right
Really? Are you really the expert here?
Right. So it doesn't matter how good you are if you can't present and convince everybody around you of that as well. So all of that really comes from how you're using the breath to make sure that the voice is resonating in a way that's sounding confident, not shaky, so that they're convinced. And then if you're not convinced, if your voice is shaking, you're not going to get there. But if it sounds great, you might start to believe it and continue to go forward with that momentum.
It's one of those things, like so many things, like what's the direction we're moving in and how can we get that momentum growing versus that slippery slope that sometimes we're on and it's just like, I can't get back to the top of the hill. I'm just, I just can't. So that makes so much sense. It starts with our breath. So what could you share with us for things for us to think about and maybe even practice that now that we're all in that headspace of, okay, yeah, it starts with our breath.
Yeah.
What can we do to be in the driver's seat of that?
For sure. So I would say the majority of us, partly because of just how fast paced the world is we're always in a hurry. And we try to get to the end of our sentence, the end of our slide, the end of whatever. And it's fast, fast, fast. Instead, if we can break things up into smaller sections so that we have the concept of almost thinking in bullet points or building blocks of ideas that you can stop with and be good, or continue to expand and add to, it's going to give a sense of control and comfort and not feeling that rush that adds to that anxiousness.
The other thing that strikes me is people are energy beings. So if you're projecting out a bunch of go-go nervous, kind of, it's going to influence the people in the room with you. Their breath might change. So, as we model for our clients or as we model, we pace our sessions, things like that. That's the same kind of thing. So Bailey says you're in front of a group, you're presenting what you could do, or maybe you've been brought in as a speaker and so it's your opportunity to show your expertise. I love that sort of a concept of chunking it down, right? Chunk it down, bullet point it, and then you can expand as the audience is available for expansion, but you can also contrast to let them add and bring their energy in.
Yeah, it's so much easier to build than to try to like rein it all in and get it back under control if you've said too much.
I mean, come on, let's be honest. How many of us have been in that place? If I said way too much, could I have a mulligan? Could I have a do-over?
Right, everybody. Absolutely. I'll also say another thing to be aware of for anybody, whatever it is they're talking about, is that you can really strategically place those pauses. Because of our attention span, if you're just talking and just going, 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 going without pausing, after a few seconds, that becomes white noise. And then your audience is, what's for lunch? They're gone. But if you're presenting to somebody and you're separating your information into those smaller chunks, that pause, whether they want it or not, that silence is different and it disrupts the thought. And so it brings attention back subconsciously. And so you can strategically place them for emphasis.
That pregnant pause kind of thing, right?
Absolutely.
I remember the commercial from 100 years ago. This is going to date me. There was a commercial about like a bath oil or something, but it says if you want to capture someone's attention, whisper. It was like this whole and it's sort of that concept of like shift it, change what they're hearing and capture the attention. And anytime that commercial came on, she would, if you want in, then you should whisper. And they were, it sort of captured the attention, right?
I love that.
I'm
Yeah.
not recommending that you whisper through all your presentations, but based upon what Bailey's saying, put a pause in there, bring them back.
Yeah, that waiting. And that also creates space, kind of not necessarily whisper, but where you have the space to raise your voice, to emphasize whatever the important details are, because that's a shift, that's a change. If the pitch goes up, but then it comes back down, because the faster we are, we're going to get really monotone, we're going to stay really here, and then it'll get to the end. And then you don't even know what you said.
Right. And they don't know what you said. And so what I love about what Bailey's sharing with us is it applies to just about everything. It's going to apply to your coaching conversations. It's going to apply to if you're speaking or doing a presentation, a webinar, whatever it is that you're offering, even in your family communication. Slow down. Don't you want to capture people's attention?
Absolutely.
In whatever conversation you're showing up in?
Yeah. And I think with that pause, we talked about listening, and that pause, whether it's an audience of hundreds of people, you're going to have that opportunity to see if there's a bunch of super confused faces, eager, excited for more. And if it is a more intimate, smaller group, one-on-one, that's where you have the opportunity to listen, whether you're listening to what they actually are responding or their body language, whatever they're doing, that's going to allow you to then dictate the conversation in a way that is specific to what that audience needs, which will benefit everybody.
Love that. The other thing that occurs to me is when we put a pause in, it allows the other person's thinking to continue. So if you're sharing valuable information, of course you are, let the people absorb. Even if you're pausing for 10 seconds might feel like forever for you, but it's actually allowing those wheels to turn, connecting that info. So I love that. That's what I say to coaches all the time. If your client doesn't respond immediately when you ask a question, rather than rushing in to clarify or rushing in to ask it another way, tell yourself, wow, that must have been an amazing question. This person needs time to think about it and take that break. It's the same kind of thing with an audience, give them an opportunity to absorb.
Yeah. And I think on the flip side of that, when asked a question, that pause is incredibly important as well, because you don't want to just jump immediately into just filling the space. Taking that time, claiming it, knowing that you can have as much as you need before beginning is also going to help people trust you more, because they're going to know that you're not somebody that's just going to be a fast talker and just get it all out and not mean it. That authenticity is going to show a lot more.
I really want everybody to hear that, because I think sometimes the thought is, if I don't have an immediate answer, it makes me look like I'm not qualified, or that I'm not experienced, or that whatever, I'm not fill in the blank. When in fact, what Bailey is saying is, when you receive something thoughtfully and give it the time and the energy that it deserves, I think the person offering you that is going to respect that you're giving their question the time that it deserves.
Absolutely. And the same thing with that in terms of, I don't know. People hate admitting, I don't know, or if they're not feeling confident. And instead, of course, you just want to be like, I don't know, and end there. But it could
Hell if
be,
I know, I don't know, go get your answer somewhere else.
right? But if it's wow, that's really interesting, I need to dive deeper into that. Or I know this, but not this. I would think about it this way. I wonder what. If you can approach it from curiosity and a forward moving plan, that I don't know is okay. Because again, that shows that you're not just blowing smoke. You have every intention of giving the best answer, not just any answer.
Love that. What about, we know that in the moment, we want to sort of pay attention to our breathing, slow down, that slowing down in the moment can help the process of breathing. What about, let's say we have time to prep before we go to something that we know is going to create a little bit of anxiety for us. We're excited about doing it, but it's a biggie or whatever. What can we do to prepare before we even get there?
Yeah, great question. So I'm going to first say recognizing that the symptoms that your body has based on if you're nervous, if you're anxious about something, are exactly the same that you're going to feel if you're excited and so thrilled to do something. So shifting that into a positive angle is step one. But then in terms of the prep side of that, that is going to be talking out loud. So because you can think about things as much as you want and it doesn't matter because you're just becoming more and more familiar with them. But you should never have the first time you say something in a meeting, in a presentation, whatever, be when you're on stage or in front of that group. Rehearse it, say it out loud while driving, hear yourself.
So important. It's I don't even know how many times I've thought, okay, I'm prepped, I'm ready to go. But then when I go to practice it, I'm like, oh, that doesn't sound as good coming out as it did in my head, or just being able to kind of think at the moment, pretending like you're in front of the audience and thinking at the moment and pulling it together. I love that tip.
Yeah, and I would also say with that, a lot of times we think we're preparing ourselves by writing a script and rehearsing and reading in our heads. But really, we write so much differently than we speak. So if we're trying to do a script, we're setting ourselves up for some sort of a disruption where it's going to be hard to get back. Instead, if you could talk through it, find the natural cadence of what comes from you comfortably, that's going to be so much easier to recreate. And if you can do that a couple different ways, say the same thing in a couple different versions, you're creating a couple neural pathways that are going to keep you going forward no matter what questions or disruptions happen.
Because they might. You might get interrupted. You might get a question. I had a tornado alarm go off once when I was speaking. You just don't know what's going to happen, and you've got to be able to pivot at that moment. And your script, like you said, your script might be like, I don't know where I was in the script. And
Yeah.
and do people really want to listen to something that's been memorized, or something that and that you can sort of share authentically?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to sound more authentic and genuine and it will be more customized. So definitely won't feel like, oh, they don't care. They're just reading over what it is. It
Right.
personalizes it a lot. Yeah.
So good. So it all starts with breath. What else do we need to know about breath, if anything?
Oh, okay. So, here's a fun tip that I catch a lot of people with. When you are speaking, much like if you were singing, avoid breathing from your nose. And it's purely an anatomy thing because if you're going to speak to somebody and then you have to take a breath through your nose to talk, I can't see, I'm running out of breath just trying to do that. But if you can have just a very balanced, easy in and out, it simplifies. It's not a huge, I'm about to jump in a pool deep breath. It's just, I take it in, I talk it out, I replenish and repeat and keep going.
And you're right. Watching you try to talk and inhale through your nose, it was like she's gonna pass out.
Yeah,
So
basically, it doesn't
yeah.
feel good.
So just kind of have it be a natural cadence with your talking, and because you're talking with your mouth, not with your nose. So good to know.
Absolutely.
What other tips or strategies do we want to be aware of when we think about the way that we're communicating? In some ways, it's our presence, right? It's the way that we are being in the moment.
Yeah, so I think there is that active listening component where it is okay, I'm recognizing how this group or this person is responding to me and it's probably very different from the last person that I talked to, whether their intentions, their motivations, their experience. So really customizing everything based on who that is. And then from there, thinking about way beforehand how you're preparing, how do I want to present? What do I want them to see? And how can I make sure that I'm communicating that to them for what they need.
Okay. So I'm hearing this preparation, preparation, preparation again and again. The more intentional we are about how we want to be and prepared that we are, the more likely we are to show up that way.
Yes, absolutely. And I think one thing to also consider with that preparation is recording yourself every once in a while. It doesn't have to be on camera, it could just be in audio. Because something as simple as if I were to say, that project will be done next week. That sounds very much like it's going to happen. But if I said the project will be done next week, it sounds like I have no clue. And all I did was change my tone slightly at the
Mhm.
very end. But same thing with, if you have fidgety things there that shows insecurities, maybe record yourself or do a Zoom to check back on to see, are you kind of like looking down? Are you changing your body language? Because all of that communicates so much more than the words that you're choosing to say.
I couldn't agree more. And I guess we could assume that people know what kind of body language tends to be um, is interpreted the way that we want it to be interpreted in confidence building. But let's just go ahead and highlight some of the nonverbals that we are very much communicating. So people hear our words, but people take in the message through the whole package. And a lot of that is our nonverbals in what we're doing, as well as the way we're saying it, the music that you put with your words.
Yeah, and I have a favorite statistic that I love to talk about, and that is that 7% of that message is coming from the words, 38% is coming from your tone, and 55% is coming from your body language. So absolutely those other components really have a big impact. So if we look at that tone, if we can think about the direct correlation between pitch and interpretation of meaning, if I were to say, it's nice to see you, and my voice goes down, my lower pitch is kind of like a, maybe I'm not so excited, but it's nice to see you. That upward pitch, higher, more positive. So little things like that can help. A lot of times people will say to me, well, I don't mean it that way. I don't mean it to sound annoyed or frustrated. So it's like, okay, well, move that up. So recognize those bad habits. And then in terms of the body language, thinking about open, connecting, forward facing, don't overdo it, making it authentic, because the internet's full of things. Just because on the internet it says, have a Wonder Woman pose every time you go into a meeting, doesn't necessarily mean that's what you need to do.
Right. So it's like she's giving you permission to determine what works for me, um, what's authentic, because this whole talk isn't going to get you where you want it to be if you're not being authentic and genuine. If you're not able to do what makes sense for you, if you're doing what Bailey says makes sense, but it doesn't make sense for Fred or Sam or whoever's listening, just we've got to own it, right? It's got to feel good in our skin.
Yeah. And I think that's also related to that whole concept of personal branding, taking the time to identify, like, what are your goals? How do I want to be interpreted? What do I want people to think about me? And leave my conversation thinking. And that is how we then put that together. Do I want to be relatable? Do I want to be very, very strong? Do I want to seem humorous? Like, whatever it is,
Right.
great, as long as you identify that as a core part of how you want to present.
Once again, comes to thinking it through in advance, preparing and thinking about, because not every one of our conversations, even every one of our presentations is tied up in, tight, uh, ultra executive or whatever. It can be fun. It can be lighthearted. What is the message that you're trying to give?
Mhm.
Love that. So let's imagine, and you talked about this a little bit, but I want to emphasize it. Let's imagine that we're in the moment. We're in the middle of an important meeting or we'll just say an important meeting. And we're suddenly feeling like maybe we're squeaking when we don't want to squeak, or that that the voice that we're presenting is not what we want. How can we change it in the moment?
Yeah. First, exhale. Your body's going to take the air in if you need it. But if we can exhale, we're not going to be stuck up here where it just is going to squeak even more. So the more that you can just release some of that tension, have that full deep exhale, you can then restart, recalibrate, have that pausing bullet point approach going to have that time. So I think not feeling the panic of like, hurry, get to the end of this meeting, I just need it to end. Instead, I think, and then deliver and continue to have whatever you need to communicate come out one thing at a time.
So breathe and slow down. It's
Yes.
so much comes back to breathing, right?
Mhm. Yep. Absolutely.
There'd be times that I'll say to my clients, let's stop and just breathe for a minute because I see that they're not breathing. I see that, it's like, okay, there's something I want everybody just right now for a minute, like inhale and just sort of feel how grateful your body is to really feel that air.
Mhm.
Oh, I feel better.
It's so much more helpful than locking it all in.
Right, right. How does being flexible kind of fit with what it is that we're talking about and how we want to be?
Yeah, so I think that comes to the idea of not having a script, to trusting yourself, because it's unlikely that you're in a meeting, you're in a situation where you're having to talk about replacing an engine if you've never done that, or like you're going to be
Right.
talking about something you know. And in that situation, know that you know how you got there, the issues that came up, what's been happening, whatever it is your topic is, you know it. So if you can just trust yourself to let that move forward, you don't have to worry about it in the moment because it's all there. And so instead of getting in our own way and locking it up, we can stay flexible and maybe mention this detail, see what happens, and then shift, oh, that reminds me of this if necessary, or just stop.
So much of what you're saying is like the way we operate as human beings, right? Like we start with the physical, the breathing, the paying attention to our body's needs, but then the mindset. What are we telling ourselves? Are we, walking into a meeting thinking this is going to stink? I'm not going to be able to deliver the way that I want to. Then that's going to influence your breath. I mean, it's like to
Mhm.
Bailey's point, you've got this. We've got now, yes, we might be going into, let's say, a presentation, and we know that we're up against three other coaching companies to potentially get the business. You don't have control over how they present or what they're presenting. So if you really center yourself into, to Bailey's point, how am I preparing for this? Have I, practiced in front of a mirror or in front of Zoom, or have I, are the words like authentic to me? Is everything the way that I really want it to be? Then all you can do is breathe and take your preparation into that meeting and present what is under your control.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's making me think of the whole concept of imposter syndrome. And I wish I could remember who said this, but I love it. And it is that imposter syndrome is not an issue with confidence, it's an issue with your memory, because in that moment, you are not remembering all the things that you have done to prepare, all the experience, the knowledge, all of that, that totally has your back.
Yeah. Instead, you're all caught up in your head about who am I to be here and what if the other companies say something better? You know what? We don't have any control over that.
Yeah.
Love that. Love, love, love it. Love the idea of, because what's resonating with me is we have what we need if we use it to our benefit.
Mhm. And what you don't have, you can get, you can figure it out, and you can change for the next time. And that's where I think sometimes people get stuck because they think, oh God, I don't have the perfect answer, the perfect experience for this. And it's like, you get it. You could look into it, you could figure it out. And similar to that, I don't know. It's not just, I don't know, bye. It's, oh, I would love to learn more about this. I feel like we could learn more about this together, or whatever, so that
Mhm.
it doesn't, nothing is static. It can always continually grow in an organic way.
Love that. Let me shift gears on you for just a second. Let's talk about, since we've got a varied audience that are doing lots of different things in the world, you're a communications coach. You work with people to do exactly the kinds of things that we're talking about. So, would you be open to sharing a little bit what motivates people to contact you and hire a communications coach?
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of things that it covers. Sometimes it's people who feel like they can't organize their thoughts or their message in a way that can get the point across the way they need it. So it's a lot of framing and restructuring and simplifying their message. For some people, it's confidence. Maybe they have to get up and speak to the executives of their company or in front of hundreds of people. And so it's really showing them that they can do it and getting them excited about the control that they have. For some people, it is interpersonal. Maybe they're having trouble leading a team, listening, whatever those things are that are kind of creating the breakdown or the lack of trust in a company or in a team dynamic. They'll come to me for that. And then I would say the last part is just clarity. There's some people that they're like, I just talk fast, I mumble, I do this, I do that. And so it comes to, again, just breaking it down to the basics to give them that ability to develop a new habit and a new way of speaking.
Love that. So I want everybody to hear. Bailey didn't know I was going to ask her that question. Bailey clearly understands her population, what it is, what their pain points are, and she knows how she works with them to be able to get over those pain points. So being able to, and many of you probably do, but I love to challenge you in being able to clearly, when somebody says, well, what would somebody come see you for as a coach? Or what is it that you work with people around? Bailey A didn't pant through that. She just clearly sort of presented and gave four different kinds of situations that people might seek her help. And thank you for that, because I think that was a beautiful example of the readiness we need to be able to have when people inquire about what it is that we do. You don't need to be apologetic. You don't need to talk and coach talk. Just like, gosh, when people struggle with this, they come see me. So that was beautiful. Thank you for that.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. That's right. So, Bailey, as our time is coming to a close, what about this whole concept of using our voice to overcome low confidence or mindset issues? Have we left on the table, if anything, before we wrap up?
Let's see. I think we covered a lot.
Hmm.
I would say one of the best things to do that we have not talked about would be to get some feedback. So, whether it's self feedback and you want to record yourself and evaluate and find the things that you say, I want to fix that, or talk to a team member, a friend, a family member, somebody that you trust who is going to give you the critiques that you need to get better. Because there's so many things that people might need to work on, and I definitely couldn't just pick one thing because everybody's so different. So customize it to yourself, take the time and prioritize what you need to make those changes in, because there's no way anybody else would know unless they really focus on you individually.
Once again, nailed it. I got to say that when I first started doing the show, I would listen to the show, and I still listen to the show, but and I still do this, but particularly at first, I would listen to my cadence. I'd listen to the word and find that I use certain words again and again. So I wrote a list like, stop using these words, or, expand your vocabulary, whatever it was. And if I hadn't taken the time to really listen to, and I don't know, but it's cringeworthy sometimes. I don't like always listening to
We're
myself.
worst critics for sure.
Yeah. So it was like, oh, but I need to do it. And we're all works in progress all the time. So I certainly haven't reached any pinnacle, but I do feel better about changing some of the habits. And I'm always looking for what other habits do I need to change. And I can only get there by asking people for feedback and giving feedback to myself.
And I'll say one more thing to bring it full circle is that you just mentioned, what are the words that I say that I don't want to say, whether it's a filler word, whether it's so, well, actually, any of those things. If you replace those with a breath, pause in that spot, you're on the right track. So it's hard to just say, don't do this thing. Instead, what to replace it with? Air.
Love that, because it is. It's like, well, if I take that, then I'm just like all wrapped around. If I breathe, oh, I can breathe. I know how to do that. Love that. Bailey, if people want to know more about you and the work that you do, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah, so they can find me on my website, and my email is there. So my website is Bailey Massey Global, and then I'm Bailey at Bailey Massey Global, pretty simple. And just reach out through there. I'm also on LinkedIn, and just ask any questions. I love to talk. I could talk about this all day long. So ask away.
Well, and you do such a good job with it. So once again, I want to thank Bailey for bringing her expertise forward. And I ask you, leave a comment about something that she shared that's really going to influence you, something you can experiment with, something that maybe shifted the way that you're thinking about something, and hopefully gave you some more confidence in the way that you show up. We offer strategies, tools, and resources every week here on the Star Coach Show. So be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening and come back each and every week, because we have other extraordinary guests like Bailey, and we all want to help you get your work into the world. If we don't put our work into the world, then the people who need us aren't getting it. We're all here on this planet together to do the heavy lifting together. So be kind to yourself. Please be kind to others. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you.